we're speaking a lot about sort of the productivity side of AI right now, obviously. And then I also think, and I'll say this briefly, and then I'll get back to you,
Please
is,
take your time.
is that, you know, since we're talking obviously so much about, and so much of your audience is event professionals, we shouldn't lose sight of the opportunity for innovation, right? Because a lot of, and I rattled off a bunch of this stuff early in the episode as well, but a lot of the potential and power when it comes to AI for events comes down to the experience as well. How do you innovate your event? How do you create a better experience, right? And that can be sort of the gimmicky stuff, right? Let's use computer vision to allow our attendees to, kind of, check in, with their face rather than waiting online for their badge and their bag. But, it's also down to the real practical stuff. Like, how do you connect attendees with each other for one-on-one networking? Incredibly valuable.
I love that.
I talked earlier about how do you connect them with the right exhibitors on the trade show floor, right? Which may even give you a way to increase rates for some of those exhibitors, which is money, right? And then down to customized agendas and stuff like that. Instead of having to flip through a giant book, have a chat with a bot who recommends the right sessions based on my interests and tells me where to go next or whatever. All of a sudden you stand apart when you do these kinds of things to make your event, feel and look and be different from the run-of-the-mill conference.
Yeah, people feel accompanied, and really like somebody shoulder to shoulder in those examples that you gave. Again, to our audience, I just encourage you, chime in the comments on this episode. How have you been using AI? How have you been using the tools? We'd love to hear from you all. Get your thoughts. It would just be great. Get your comments and engage with us. We're about to wrap up, Greg. And again, I make this self-effacing comment, but it's actually true. I'm not the valedictorian. I'm closer to the short bus, but I don't know how politically correct that is these days.
Probably not correct at all.
I had this occurrence. I wouldn't even own it as an idea, that I was using ChatGPT, and then I was using it on a proposal, and then I asked. I made a prompt to help me. I used the prompt to improve my prompt, and I felt like, ooh, I'm going to get like a gold star. This is like so unique. And then I went over to the Google, as my mother calls it, the Google. And I just started like how to use prompts to improve prompts. And there's like a whole universe of it. I thought for a minute, like, I'm not going to say I had an original idea, but I was like, God, this is actually, wow, I'm using it to work itself. How original. And there was a whole universe around that. But the point is that that came up kind of naturally, albeit I found out later it's not that original, which is fine, but it's kind of cool to use the technology on itself,
Yeah.
I just felt that,
and it's interesting though, because like I'm trying to think how to say this. I'm not a huge fan of like the concept of prompt engineering, especially when it elevated to this point where everyone was like, that's the job of the future. It's like, no, it's not. It's like a bug in the system that we have to know how to prompt engineer. That will correct itself over time as these systems become more sophisticated. But working with a lot of clients, they're always asking, how do I get the most out of these systems? And you would be surprised, even though it was not an original idea, the number of people who made that logical leap that you did is relatively low. It just doesn't occur to people, let me ask this AI how to prompt it to get a better response, right? And that's actually a more advanced prompting technique. Or asking the AI, here's what I want you to do. Ask me questions so that I can fill in the gaps that allow you to give me a better answer, right? Things like that. And it's the kind of thing you only get when I think you use these tools regularly and you're willing to and open to experimenting.
Exactly.
A lot of people tried ChatGPT once 18 months ago and were disappointed with it, or the novelty wore off or whatever, and they've not gone back to it. And ChatGPT is obviously only one tool. There's hundreds of tools. But, I think you need to, as any kind of a professional, do exactly what you're doing, which is make the effort to experiment, experience it for yourself, and just try stuff, iterate, and not everything's going to work. You're going to fail a lot, right? You'll get some dopey response that makes no sense whatsoever. And, shame on you if you use it in something. But,
Right.
it's that kind of thing, this willingness to just play
Yeah.
and giving yourself that permission to play that's critical right now.
Yeah. As my grandmother said, how do you know what an apple tastes like? You got to take a bite. I mean, you got to get in there and just type in a prompt and cut your teeth and learn. And, not only did I ask it to help me with prompts, but, now I'm getting way out of my wheelhouse. But now I'm kind of have templates, right? And and so because they're reusable and repeatable,
Right.
back to our whole idea, so that I'm going back, kind of utilizing it for it to produce some sameness, right? Or not
Right.
sameness in copy, but generate the ideas or generate the summaries that I'm looking for. Specifically, there were summaries.